Alright, hi everybody. Welcome to my little channel where I walk around, explore, and talk a little bit about history. So I got to go to a lot of cool places in the area. I live in Georgia, so we're kind of in the low country on the coast, at least where I am now. And today we are on St. Simon's Island and we are at Fort Frederica. Beautiful place. So if you just kind of want to wander around with me and explore, then just subscribe, and then I can have 10 subscribers instead of just 5. But I love the 5 that I have. All right. So this is Fort Frederica, like I said, St. Simon's Island, Georgia. And this fort was built in 1736. And this was also the site of a military town that supported the fort. I'm going to go around, and they are always cutting the grass when I am here. So this is basically the entrance of the fort, or what would have been. There's a little moat. You can see the little earthen walls. So quick history. Savannah was founded in 1733. by James Oglethorpe, British colony, and it was founded as a buffer. Well, debtors were there and so forth and so on, but it was pretty much a buffer between South Carolina, the British, and Florida, which would have been the Spanish. In 1736, this was called the debatable territory or debatable lands. So it was this area between basically roughly Savannah down to Florida that was just always contested between the British, the Spanish, and of course the Native Americans were here first, and they would, ally with whoever met their needs, which is what you do. So this fort was built in 1736. I probably said that a million times already. And this is the town. This would have been Broad Street of the town that would have supported the fort. Immigrants came in from a lot of Scottish, there were English, and there were some German immigrants as well that were brought in to populate this town. At one point there were about 1,500 people that lived here, and they lived within these fort walls. So just a quick pan around. I'm trying to be better about panning slowly. Let's go up a little bit so you can see these trees. Just so pretty. So there were a few battles in this ongoing feud with the Spanish. One of the biggest, it's called the War of Jenkins' Ear. So it was called that because there was a ship captain. The ship was the Rebecca, and I believe in 1731 Captain Robert Jenkins was on his ship, and it was boarded by Spanish, and there was a kerfuffle, and Captain Jenkins lost his ear, and 7 years later he went to the authorities in England and said, here you go. And they basically just use it as an excuse to start this war, the War of Jenkins' Ear, with the Spanish. And that war mostly took place in the Caribbean, the West Indies. There were a couple battles around here, but because of that we have Fort Frederica. So we have some tabby ruins from a home here. So that's just the quick on how we ended up with this fort here. There were forts all up and down the Georgia coast. There's Fort Darien, Fort King George, with the sole intent of protecting against the Spanish interests. So the War of Jenkins' Ear. So it was named that by a British historian in like the 1850s. But that started in 1738 or so, and it ended, I want to say 1743. There were two battles here in St. Simon's that occurred really close to Fort Frederica. Bloody Marsh was one, July 7th, I think, 1742, and the same day there was another skirmish or a small battle, and that's about half a mile from here, and that was called Gully. Oh man, I forgot. I wrote it down too. Same day, the British won. They repelled the Spanish and kept St. Simon's Island in British hands. So they've been doing a lot of excavating. Trying to, there we go. I would put a bug spray factor of probably about 10. There's a lot of mosquitoes around here. Give you a sense of where we're at. Try to keep it straight. So the town was pretty much uninhabited by 1755, and in 1758 there was a fire that basically wiped it out. Seems to be the running theme of things. There is a bee on my camera. So here we have a double lot. You can see the fireplaces there. You can see the tabby. I've talked about tabby before. Made from oyster shells, which are in abundance along the coast. But there's your tabby foundation. These beautiful trees. Let's pan up slowly. There we go. And you can see they're doing some more excavation. This town was laid out according to the Oglethorpe plan, which I had read somewhere when I was reading up on the history of Savannah, was based on an old Roman military encampment plan, but it was where you had a grid pretty much, and you had squares with green areas and common squares and private squares and where you put your homes and so forth, and the whole thing was very much fueled by the Enlightenment, because apparently James Oglethorpe was an enlightened guy. Okay, feel like I've missed something. So just a brief kind of, there's a lot of history here on St. Simon's, that there's just, and all these little battles and wars. I'd never heard of the War of Jenkins' Ear, until I came here, actually. I should slow down, I think. Sorry, I'm kind of galumping along. So, as happens with towns that just kind of disappear, of course the fire destroyed a lot, but anything left over gets hauled off and used elsewhere. You take advantage of your resources. You can see where it flooded. I believe, yes, this was a candle maker's home. Pretty cool. And of course shop. Let's pan down so you can see that. Pretty neat. And in the distance, let me go around. I'm going to tell you right now, I had a hard time balancing my camera today, so I'm trying to keep everything straight. So this is a state park, and it's free. And I actually just got the coolest shirt that on the back it says St. Simon's Island, my life is in ruins, and it has pictures of the ruins here, and you know, I just love it. Here, there's another big tavern keeper and doctor. So apparently, I remember this story. They shared this lot. Oh, they're on my bed. Yeah. So there you go. You can see the fireplaces right there in the center. But as the story goes, one side was one house, was the doctor's home, and you can see they're not very big. They're not big at all. And the other side was the tavern keeper, which, you know, would have been the tavern. And they fought because, you know, a tavern's not going to be the quiet place that a doctor might need. So yeah. Alright, so this is the battery for Fort Frederica. We are on the Frederica River. So right now we're facing west. So right behind me is going to be the Atlantic Ocean, even though you can't see it from here. One of these cannons, the one on the left, was actually found in this river. So that's pretty cool. This was a strategic waterway. This was an island, so of course, you know, people wanted it. It was good for defensive purposes. I'm not going in there. They're kind of creepy. But, you know, some people might enjoy that. Let's take a little walk around, shall we? There's another cannon. That first one probably came from another site, I believe. Guns on the river is what it says. They think this might have been part of Frederica's original armament, but they're not 100% sure. And you can see we just have this beautiful waterway here. And this little bastion, which really wasn't that big. I've said it before about these abandoned places, and I'll say it again, but could you just imagine coming across this as a kid? There was nothing here. So anyone that lived close by, of course I think it was part of a plantation at some point, I'm not sure. But you know, you literally have a castle in your backyard. Literally. Well, if you were very small, that's what it would seem like. So this is all that remains of the original fort. You can see parts of the earthenwork walls. There are definitely holes that I just stepped in one. There are definitely the tabby foundations, which you see so much of in this area. And these buildings here, so there's one right there, and another one right here. Would have been storage. Yes, they would have been storage. I have it panned up a little bit so you can see the sky. It's just, I mean, look how pretty that is over there. This is so gorgeous. Here, the remnants of another storehouse. Okay. All right. And then we'll look at this from the town. And there you go. Very pretty. Very, very pretty. Okay. So I'm filming this little walk over to the barracks because I just want you to get a sense of just how pretty it is. With the Spanish moss literally everywhere. And hopefully you get a little, oh, sorry about that, idea of the size. We're coming up on another building. And this would have been the keeper of the king's stores. Very cool. So there are horseflies here. My advice is to, use bug spray and just keep moving. Keep on moving. Okay. So over to the left, right ahead, if you could see, I hope I'm pointing ahead, would have been the parade ground. And straight ahead, that other castle-y looking building that we're walking up to was the barracks. I think, how many soldiers? 700 for some reason is sticking out to me. I'm not sure. But you could see where the entrance was, and it is wet. And I'm not going to go any closer. Can I find a high ground? I can. This is water. And you can see where the oyster shells are, would have been the building. So yeah, the barracks. That little mound right behind that, kind of going behind, would have been one of the walls. And we're coming up on a main drag of the town. It's just so spread out right now. It's easy to forget, excuse me, that this was a military town. And then right over there would have been one of the bastions. We'll walk over there. But here you go. We are going down one of the, I think, main streets. All right. These trees are not that old, but they sure do look pretty. You can imagine it. So, over there to the right, so towards the west, is the magazine and the river. The center of the town where those people are walking, right there in the center. And then the gate for the town, right over there, facing east. Okay. Just a nice overview from what would have been the town gate on the north side, looking along a wall. Okay. So just outside what would have been the wall of the fort, we do have this beautiful monument. Come on. That was placed here by Robert Abbott. Who's Robert Abbott? I'm going to tell you. So he was born here at St. Simon's Island, 1868. His parents had been slaves. Born here on St. Simon's. At one point, he and his mother moved up to Savannah. And then he ended up in Chicago. And he founded the Chicago Defender. He had heard Frederick Douglass speak, and he was just so inspired. Yeah, he started the Chicago Defender, which talked about atrocities that were occurring, for black people in the South. And he was very instrumental. I believe he started the paper in 1905. Very instrumental in helping with the Great Migration that happened between 1910 and 1970, which was the mass movement of black people from the South to the North. And what he would do is he would post job listings in his paper, train schedules, ways to get out of the South, places to live, and they would smuggle the papers down into the South so that Southern blacks could have it and read it and get out. So he placed this monument here in 1929 in memory of his aunt and his father. So we do have a graveyard over here. I believe this is part of the Abbott family graveyard, but I am not certain. But here you go. African American burial ground. I shouldn't have said Abbott family. He does have family members buried here, though. I think it's pretty cool that he had that monument put up in 1929. Honestly, you think about it, there was probably still a lot of racism going on in 1929. And he asked the landowner, "Can I put it here?" And the landowner said yes. And there we have it. So, good on him. And there you go. The Abbott Memorial. And a little bit about Robert Abbott. Thanks.